name is Thom Rayner. I am joined by Kevin Ezell, the president of the North American Mission Board. We got to do this sometimes, folks. We've got to have a pre-roll that you can listen to and view on YouTube. I just feel like you're missing out on so much if you don't come in early, because there's just so much conversation. This time, Kevin and I were talking, and Amy started talking, and then my wife, Nellie Jo, joins in, and we're just all having this great conversation and laughing. I'm thinking, everybody's missing out on this conversation. And it just went in so many directions. We talked about art, and we talked about colors on the palette, and gosh, it was just a fascinating conversation. Yeah. Kevin, I'm just sorry we're leaving people out on this.
Man, I'm not at all. I think we're all better for it. They are too.
Well, thank you to our listeners on the podcast, our viewers on YouTube. In case you are confused about where you are, we are at Revitalize and Replant. Keep in mind that Revitalize and Replant is the podcast that's sponsored by the North American Mission Board. A lot of places you can go, but go to churchreplanters.com or go to namb.net to find out about it. Love what NAM is doing. And Kevin, I guess your folks were recently really active with the hurricane and disaster relief headed in that direction.
No, absolutely. And we have several of our church planners have just basically lost everything. And it's really sad. But no, they've been very, very active. And actually, it's twofold. Because Sin Relief is national and international. We're dealing with trying to help place the Afghan refugees at the same time with the flood in New Orleans. So it's been a pretty active time. But we have a great network of churches that rise to the occasion in an incredible way. So I'm real thankful.
You do. So many people, when they think of the North American Mission Board, they think of the area where they probably have the most interest or focus. For some, it may be evangelism. For others, it may be church planning. For others, it may be church replanting. For others, it may be disaster relief. But what a great North American mission organization. Aptly called the North American Mission Board. Great leadership, Kevin. You've always provided that. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about issues in church revitalization now that are occurring in this COVID world. And we've had plenty of COVID conversation before, but now we are in a second spike. I'm keeping watch of the data, and I'm watching that maybe Florida has peaked and is beginning to decline, because I'm in Florida right now. But there are a lot of places where it's still really going strong. And we got a lot of churches that are church leaders that are asking questions. And we're going to talk about this. The good thing about this, it's a 3-part series. And this 3-part series is about revitalizing in a COVID world. And we're going to be talking about that revitalization that has taken place. So I love what's going on with the North American Mission Board, and I love what's taking place with Church Answers being able to respond to many of these people. So, Kevin, I just want to thank you and all the things that you're doing with NAM to keep us moving forward. So let's look at 5 ways or 5 issues of revitalization in a COVID world. First thing up, Kevin, many churches are making pivots again.
Right.
To adjust to the long-term effects of COVID. So what are some of the things you're seeing there?
Yeah, it's just, it's so sad. I just had a funeral of one of our revitalization pastors. He was in his 40s, single breadwinner, 3 kids.
Oh my goodness.
One of the child special needs, and his dad passed away just like 3 hours later. And so this has really seemed to hit the churches that we're dealing with more so than the first round.
Right.
So I think, we're having to deal with it. Instead of this being a short-term thing, it's become obviously we're talking about years here. Everyone thought it would come, pass, and move on, but it's not. And so we're having to really look at some long-term implications and how to adjust. But I've seen it hit pastors themselves more this time around than the first.
I think you're right. There are several different issues at in effect. One of those is the expectation. You mentioned that we came through round one of COVID because we thought it was the only round. And so we had this expectation it was going to be over. And it's easy not easy, but it's easier to endure pain when you see that it has a fairly quick cycle. And remember, we thought it was going to be 3 or 4 months to begin with. Then it stretched out into well over a year. And then we got the news that, hey, the numbers are looking good. Let's open up things again. And then the second, particularly Delta variant spike of this hit. So a lot of adjustments taking place.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll go through our list here, but it's like, I feel so bad for pastors. There's just so much anger out there, built up frustration, and maybe it's part COVID, part political. I'm not sure, but they just can't win, to vax, to not to vax, to mask or not to mask. I mean, you're liberal, you're what? It's amazing. I just feel so bad trying to navigate this. There is no wind for most of these, and it has nothing to do with the size or even the strength of churches. It just seems to be across the board. There just seems to be a built-up toxicity of people that guys are having to navigate that they've never navigated before. But we've all dealt with mean people.
Oh, yeah.
But boy, this is built up.
You've got a PhD in dealing with mean people.
Yeah. But but still, I just think anything we do to help pastors keep it in perspective, and it's about surviving the barrage at this point for so many guys.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it, because you're right. The fire is in so many different directions and just happening all over the place. Well, that brings us to that second point, is the issue of unity. Pastors and other church leaders are dealing with unity issues more than ever. And you talked about them, Kevin. You talked about the issue of mask or no mask. We did have an issue of social distance or no social distance. One church that is connected to Church Answers, the church leader said, we're having an issue about fighting over turning the water fountain back on or not.
Yeah. I mean, this makes the organ, whether to sell it or not, no big deal. I mean, really, these issues, it seems so small, but for some, not. I mean, I had a friend, I think, recently a pastor fired just because he was saying, hey, you need to consult your doctor and make the best decision for yourself. I mean, that you can't go down the middle more than that. And just to even bring it up is, it's just ridiculous. And I'm not sure. It just seems to be exponentially worse, and people go from 0 to 100 on the stress, meter faster than I've ever seen. I mean, and that's from driving to the office or dealing with people in a church. It just seems like there's a lot of built up frustration, and you're right. Navigating those unity. And what's amazing, these people want to leave your church and go to another where it's not like they're not dealing with the same issues.
Absolutely. Yesterday, from the recording that we're doing here today, we did a recording on Rain on Leadership, and one of the people we interviewed was Tim Chalice. And Tim is approaching the first year anniversary of the death of his 20-year-old son. Tim is a Canadian blogger and well known. And he made this comment. He said, when you lose a son, and by the way, his heart stopped, the son's heart stopped. All the autopsy reports are, we have no idea. He was perfectly healthy, but his heart stopped. 20 years old, his sister was there. He just died. He died at Southern Seminary. And the only son, one of three children of Tim, his oldest child. And he said, you know what I've had to do? I've had to just walk away from social media.
Yeah.
He said, this issue has been the wake-up call for me that I'm wasting too much time reading all the divisiveness. And someone will ask me what do I think about this? And he said, it's been pretty joyous to tell people I don't even know about it, much less have an opinion on it.
Yeah. I've done that. One of the things that I got to ask, what's the one thing you've learned through COVID? And I learned about the mute button on Twitter and people on different social media. But when you mute somebody, you're not unfollowing them so you don't offend them. You just mute them. They go away. And so I only follow happy people now. Both of them.
Well,
but,
well,
but
me and the other person, thank you.
exactly. I mean, really though, that changes everything. But I have people let me know if something's going AWOL out there that we need to respond to. But it really does take a lot of it out when you don't. And again, at the end of the day, some of these people, what do you care what they think? They really, and
You're not going to change their mind.
no. And I still go back to I know I've said it before on here, but the 2% jerk factor. I read that in the book Excellence Wins by Schultz.
Yeah.
And he said he founded the Ritz Carlton and said, "Hey, even the Ritz Carlton can't please 2% of the people out there. There's always a 2% jerk factor you just can't please." And when you do the calculations, it's like in the Southern Baptist Convention, part of family we're part of 47,000 churches. That means 940 would be the jerk factor.
Yeah.
I have a list. I'm up to 72. All right. There's just not this. And so sometimes you overthink it, you think it's much louder than it really is.
Yes.
And it's just like the farmer who hired a guy to go get all the bullfrogs out of his pond. He thought there were thousands out there, and the guy comes back with 3, and he said, "There's just 3. They sound like thousands, but they're just 3." And that's how sometimes it is in church.
Yes. I love that, and social media is also the megaphone for these. So the bullfrogs sound really loud when they're on social media.
Yeah, but they don't have any. Most of them don't have any teeth. They just want to talk a lot.
Yeah, and there's so much. Kevin, I went on Twitter and Facebook. I wasn't the earliest adopter, but I was an earlier adopter, primarily at the pushing of other folks to get there. In fact, the company where I was hired at the time, they actually brought me on saying that you need to build a platform. They didn't use that word, but my contract told me I was needed to do this and do that. And so, somebody said you need to write a blog. I said, what's a blog? They said,
right.
It's a web log. That's why we call it that. And then one person that our viewers cannot see, but we can see in this, named Amy Jordan, encouraged me to go to podcasting because that was the next thing. And then all of these things took place, and now everybody has a megaphone, but
right.
Most people have a limited megaphone. We got to keep that in perspective.
Right.
Another thing that's happening, third point, is facility decisions are on holds. I'm hearing more and more churches talk about really reconfiguring buildings more than building new buildings, just because we don't know what's going to happen post-COVID, if there is a post-COVID.
Right. No, you're exactly right. People get hesitant financial decisions. They just want to put everything on hold. Although we've seen the giving seems to be tracking very well with churches. Their expenditures. They're just a little bit nervous, about going to a long-term commitment to a debt. And
yes.
So I've had more churches email me just yesterday. Hey, we're about to send you a large, this particular church will send $50,000 to meet any need you see out there. And
wow.
And we've getting several of those a week now. So they have the money, but they don't want to do long-term debt, like long-term commitment and building type needs. But it seems like they have money to put toward ministry. If that makes sense.
Talking to the CEO of Brown Development Company, which is a design build company out of Nebraska, and he was telling me that he is getting more questions about reconfiguration than he is about building, and he said bigger foyers or welcome areas, probably downsizing of worship centers, things of that nature. So all kinds of reevaluation going on there.
Right.
This fourth point, the percentage of churches indicating a need for some level of revitalization is now past the over 90% mark. That is actually data that we have at Church Answers, asking the leaders, do you think your church is in need of some type of revitalization? And now the number is over 90%. Does that surprise you at all that it's that high, Kevin?
I mean, that is high. I'm surprised at the amount of people that need it and don't realize it.
That's a good point.
That's the very first step, obviously, is knowing that you need to do something. And so, no, I would think that would be that seems seems high, but man, I don't doubt that at all.
And the question was worded soft, and it was, do you think your church needs some type of revitalization?
Yeah.
So that's not just, it's a little bit of an out farm. Oh yeah, we could need help in this area instead of,
Mm-hmm.
but you're right. At least they're admitting that they need help. So uh, I guess the good news on this, like you said, is if you admit you have an issue, a problem, then you will
Yeah.
seek help.
No, absolutely. I think COVID's helped that too, for people to be more open to maybe examine themselves and be a little bit more honest about what they really are. I was in a group of 150 pastors the other night, and I was on a panel, and they were talking about different things that they'd eliminated. And it's just been a great time for guys to go through and say, hey, look, this really wasn't effective anyway. It really wasn't accomplishing what we want to do anyway. And they said that their people seem to be more open to realistically examine where they are than ever. And so maybe that's what leads to even people being honest about 90%. Maybe they're just more open to admitting, the reality.
Any trends that you're seeing on the replanting side? Are you anything about churches being willing to be adopted by another church?
Yeah, maybe on the other side, I see many more churches open to adopting churches and seeing that is a need. We've been pushing church planting and the need for church planting, but I really see existing churches having a heart. They see the desperate need to revitalize churches and want to jump in and help. And what they're trying to do is navigate how to do that. Because not churches are scared of people wanting to help. You wanting to help take us over, take help, or wanting to just help us get on our feet, or they're trying to navigate, and it comes with those long-term relationships. Those are obviously more successful, but it's amazing how many churches are more open to helping other churches, that just creates a much healthier environment.
Totally so. Of course, we've used the adoption metaphor for the replant. You're bringing someone into your family. Yeah, you're still the leader of the family, but you're bringing someone in.
Yeah.
And an extension of that, of course, I've mentioned it on this podcast before, is we're talking about the fostering route, where you help a church for a specified amount of time.
Right.
Make certain that you have an end date so a dependency is not created. And at the end of that time, one of three things is going to happen. One, it's going to be over and nothing would have happened. It's still a bad situation. Two, they're going to say, we know that we need help. Would you come and adopt us? Or three, it turns around. So you're no worse off in a fostering situation than you were. So we're working with churches in that way too.
Yeah. What we've seen also is an increase. I just got off the phone with the pastor in Alaska yesterday. Well, facilities coming open from other denominations. And so, and they've been, they want to see a work, but they are like, we're down to 15 people. Can you just take this and do something with it? And we'll join in. And we've had a tremendous amount of facility transitions and people offering us facilities that, quite honestly, some aren't in strategic locations, and it's not worth the investment, but where they're placed, you have to evaluate, because you're getting so many offers, because people are just tired and like, look, we can't do this anymore. I think COVID has kind of pushed some to that point of decision.
Has exacerbated the problem.
Yeah.
We found out after the fact, I should say, Amy found out after the fact, that a church, we have a Sunday feature called Pray For at Church Answers, and we pray for a specific church. And not too long ago, we were praying for a church from Alaska, and I'm going to watch Amy to make sure I get the facts right. We found out after the fact, praying for this was the first African-American Southern Baptist church in Alaska. And did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We had no idea when we featured them as Pray For.
Oh, man, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
They came back and found out that information, and kind of cool. Love praying for a church every week. The churches that are moving forward, our last point, and this is an important point, are more likely to have an outward focus or an increased focus on evangelism. Right. Maybe one of the benefits of COVID is that churches are going to say, you know what, we can't grow by transfer growth anymore. Right. At least it's going to be modest, because that's just not the source of growth. We're going to have to actually start sharing the gospel and seeing people come to Christ. And we're seeing that with some. It's not a movement, but it is an indicator.
Yeah. I see. Again, I don't know if it's across the board, but I just know some of the strategic churches are seeing an increase in baptism. I just talked to a pastor in Houston. They'd never baptized over 200. They baptized 500 people in the last year.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and it started with a prayer movement about evangelism, just praying specifically for people.
There you go.
And I think there is an openness to people who are not believers now. I was just talking to my neighbor on Saturday, because I'm not a believer, and of all things, man, he had on his table he had a purpose-driven life book. He goes, "You ever heard of this?" and I've been praying for an open door, an avenue to be able to talk with him, and he was showing me he has all these mounts all over his house. He hunts, and I say, yeah, matter of fact, that's, I mean, no telling how many decades old that is, but it's a chance, to walk him. And he's a guy who's been, again, not a believer, cold to anything like that at all. And I just think people realize their own personal vulnerability, because they're having friends, die right and left, and it's having them think about eternal things more, I believe.
For sure. Hey, what we are doing is we have a 3-episode or 3-part series, 5 ways to revitalize in a COVID world. And we've been talking about 5 key issues this time. The next 2 episodes, so you come back for this, the next 2 episodes, we're going to be dealing with the unity issue in the 2nd episode. And then in the 3rd episode, we're going to be dealing with the evangelistic apathy issue. So some of these things that Kevin and I are talking about, you will be hearing about in the future episodes that we have on this. Keep in mind, this is a 3-part series, 5 ways to revitalize in a COVID world. Each of these has 5 things that we're talking about, and we'll be dealing with that more in the future podcast. Thank you, Kevin Ezell. Thank you, North American Mission Board. Kevin, I guess you're in the Alpharetta area, according to the background I see there.
So, I travel with this. Yeah.
And Amy, who is in the Richmond area, and I'm in the Panhandle of Florida, and we greet you from 3 states, and we say thank you for being a part of Revitalize and Replant. And whether you're listening to us on a podcast, give us a rating and review wherever you listen to us on a podcast, or go to YouTube and go to the YouTube channel and give us a like. I mean, who can't like Kevin Ezell? Well, let me rephrase that.
I can send you a list.
Most people like Kevin Ezell. So give us a like there to let us know that you're listening to this. This is all a ministry of the North American Mission Board. So just let us know you're there. Thank you again for listening and watching Revitalize and Replant, where we're helping churches get healthier together.